Hey there, and welcome to another Ask Me Anything session where I am answering all your questions on the publishing process and writing a better book. I also wanted to give a shout out to my amazing 12,000 subscribers. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for helping me reach this milestone. I truly never thought I would even get here. So it's kind of baffling to me that I'm even saying this, but just thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to you. I hope these Ask Me Anything videos are helpful, and I'm really enjoying how I'm getting to engage a bit more directly with the community. To get the logistics out of the way, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And you may have heard me talk about this free story self-assessment that I have in the description below. It's a worksheet designed to help you identify the strengths and weaknesses in your own work in progress. So definitely grab that if you haven't already. It's also going to sign you up for my newsletter that I currently have in the works, with exclusive tips and resources. Without further ado, let's dive into the questions today. We have some great ones. Here's the first question. Hey Alyssa, I recently found a book that I think would be an incredible comp for the one I'm writing. The problem is, my book is an adult fantasy romance, and this book is YA fantasy. They have similar settings, character types, and vibes though. And most of the titles I find in adult similar to mine tend to be self-published and don't work as comps either. I've been told that comping to a YA title when you're writing an adult book isn't recommended, but it's such a perfect fit outside of its age category, I could cry. I have plenty of other adult fantasies romances that I can comp to as well, but would I get the side eye for including this YA title, or should I just make like Elsa and let it go? Love that. My opinion here is include it, especially because you have noted why it is such a good fit, so make sure that you put that information in the comparable titles line in the query letter itself. A template that I like to recommend using is my novel combines the X of this novel with the Y of that novel. So make sure that at least one of those two comps that you are using is within your genre exactly, so adult fantasy romance, but the other one being a YA fantasy, I think personally is completely fine, especially if you call out that it has a similar setting as that one, but the character development arc is more in line with the adult novel, for instance. In my experience, agents aren't super concerned with comps being absolutely to a T the same genre that the author is querying with. As we know, genre is also quite fluid, especially these days. So because this comp is so perfect, as you said, it almost feels like you would do a disservice not to mention it. So I'd go ahead and put it in, but make sure that you do have at least one or two other comps that are adult. Oh, here's another comps question. So keeping with the same theme, as I've been working on my manuscript, I've also been dutifully reading in my genre to help me find some comp titles for when I'm ready to submit to agents. I recently found a book that is a great comp, perfectly matching in a genre, theme, and plot. It's the debut novel of a now best-selling author, and it did well. The problem is that I just didn't like it. I thought it was a bit of a mess, but on paper, it's a perfect comp. Do I include it? Thanks for any advice. Totally see why you're in a little bit of a tricky situation here. First, I want to say that it is absolutely great to hear that you have been reading in your genre to determine your comparable titles and also just get a better sense of the market. I always recommend doing that. Many authors who are embarking on the querying journey haven't really read much in the genre, particularly what has been recently published in the genre, so it's excellent that you're taking that step and getting a feel for the types of books being published in your genre today. As for your question about the comps, it's ultimately a personal decision up to you. Because the book is representative of the type of novel that you are publishing and because it did well, that likely means that it has a pretty good reputation and therefore it could work well as a comp. However, if you really hated it so much that you never want your book to be associated with that one, then maybe I would steer away from it. But otherwise, I don't really see an issue with you including it as a comp just because you didn't like it. After all, comparable titles are more of a marketing strategy than they are an editorial strategy. So if you think of it that way, it isn't so important that you loved the comp so much as the comp is in the same vein and appealing to the same readership that your novel is. That's really the core question with the comparable titles, more so than if the book itself and the craft of the book and the style of the prose is right on par with yours. Here's another question. Do you think Grammarly is a worthwhile investment for writers? Are there any common references on grammar, punctuation, and mechanics that editors use? So the tools Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid can be really helpful, particularly if you struggle with copy editing level mistakes such as grammar and punctuation and spelling. But keep in mind that they don't necessarily replace working with an editorial partner because they can't identify things like plot holes or whether the ending is effective or not, or the pacing. They're really just looking at sentence level issues. I am a developmental editor, so I'm usually thinking about those types of questions when I'm editing and not necessarily diving into grammar and spelling. But I do know editors and authors who use Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid, and others who just rely on the built-in spell check and grammar check in Word, which is pretty robust as well. So I would say it's definitely not necessary that a writer invests in these editing softwares. However, if you find them helpful and you find that they enrich your writing and they help you learn some of those grammar mechanics, then absolutely go ahead and use them. Here's a two-part question. I'm querying at the moment, and I think this partially answered some of my question. Should I mention in the query that one of the main characters is asexual? It's not a romance novel, but the book does explore aspects of a deep friendship to the point of brotherhood between two male characters. I would say you don't necessarily have to mention it, but if you find that it is critical to the plot, it's critical to that character's development, then it would be worth mentioning it in the query in some way. You don't have to dwell on this character's asexuality in too much detail, particularly if it is not a main focus of the plot itself. But when you're describing the character in the query letter, you can certainly mention that they are asexual. The next part of the question is, preface. These questions are a little awkward and I really don't know how to ask them. How should I query using a book with predominantly male characters? I ask because I've noticed in my querying journey so far that there is a very heavy emphasis on the feminist or female main character, and it seems fewer literary agents are looking for male main characters anymore. If anything, it seems like any book with a heterosexual male main character is almost doomed to fail. Is this a predominant trend in the publishing workspace in your opinion, that having a male main character is less likely to get published than a female main character? I definitely understand where this concern and anxiety is coming from. After all, the truth is that most of the editorial professionals in the book publishing industry, as well as most literary agents, are women. There are fewer male literary agents, and there are fewer male acquiring editors at publishing houses. At the imprint that I used to work at, there was only one male acquiring editor on our team of about 10. So I think that results in some anxiety for authors who are writing male characters, especially if the literary agent's manuscript wish lists specifically call out that they're interested in female-focused stories. There's also a common statistic that women buy the majority of books in the market, so that could also feed into the idea that there are more female protagonists in the fiction landscape than male protagonists. That said, look at any bestseller list or any fiction prize list, and you are still going to see male authors writing male characters. For instance, A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles was a huge blockbuster bestseller, and the novel Less by Andrew Sean Greer won the Pulitzer Prize a few years ago. There was also The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead that won the Pulitzer Prize. Also, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch is a thriller that I recently read for a book club, and that featured a male protagonist. So there are certainly examples of contemporary novels being published and hitting bestseller lists, winning prizes, written by men and with male protagonists. At the end of the day, you shouldn't change your story or change what you're writing about in order to appeal to what you think a literary agent wants or what you think the market wants. I really believe that you as a writer are going to be the most successful if you lean into the stories you want to tell and the stories you want to write. I hope you liked this Q&A session today. If you want to ask me anything, please leave it in the comments below. This is the queue that I use whenever I'm filming these videos. As I mentioned before, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and grab that free story self-assessment, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.